Hi, Reddit. Thanks for being here. Make sure to subscribe and drop a like. It helps the channel a lot.
Year and a half long affair. I never thought I would be the kind of person to sit down and spill out my life story on the internet, but here I am. It has been years since I first uncovered the truth, and even now, I still can't decide whether the most painful part was what my husband did, or how long he kept lying to my face. I can tell you this much, though. What started as small suspicions turned into undeniable proof, and what followed nearly destroyed my marriage, my trust, and even my own sense of reality. By the time I finally pieced everything together, the affair had already been going on for a year and a half. But let me back up, because you need to understand how it all began, how the lies piled up, and how I ended up confronting the person I thought I knew best. I'm 36 years old, and my husband, let's call him Mike, is 35. We've been together for 11 years, and married for 9 of them. When we first met, my life was already in motion. I was a single mom, raising my son Alex, who was 8 years old at the time and is now 19. I had my own place, a steady job, and a sense of independence that I was proud of. Mike, on the other hand, was still living at home with his parents. He was sweet, charming, and had a way of making me laugh, even when I was exhausted from work and parenting. We fell in love quickly, and despite our differences in circumstances, I thought we made a great team. Fast forward to today, and we now have 2 more kids together, Riley, who is 8, and Sam, who is just 2. On the outside, our little family looked happy and whole. But about a year and a half ago, everything started to change. That's when Mike became close with a coworker, a woman I'll call Emily. Emily was 45, older than both of us, and still married at the time. I didn't think much of it at first. I've always believed that people can have friends of the opposite sex, and I didn't want to be the controlling wife who polices her husband's relationships. But almost immediately, there were red flags. It started with a coworker's engagement party. Mike came home late that night, and when I asked how it went, he gave me vague answers. Later, I found out that after the party ended, Emily told a few of their coworkers to cover for her. She wanted them to say that Mike wasn't with her. The 2 of them had left together and gone out on their own. I didn't know that at the time, but looking back, that was the first major sign something was wrong. I thought it was just one night, a silly decision, nothing worth ruining my peace of mind over. But I was so wrong. Another thing I noticed was how often Mike would take Riley with him places. At first, I thought it was sweet, that he wanted to spend more time with our daughter, give me a little break, bond with her. But later, I realized what he was actually doing. He was taking Riley to hang out with Emily, disguising their get-togethers as casual coworker meetups. In reality, it was just the 3 of them, Mike, Emily, and my child. He didn't even tell me Emily would be there. He made it sound like he was with a group of friends from work. I only found out the truth when I put together little pieces, comments from Riley, timelines that didn't make sense, and eventually, things he admitted later on. One of the worst parts? He would hide these outings by turning off his phone location. That detail alone makes my blood boil even now. If you need to lie about where you are, if you need to hide your tracks, then you already know you're doing something wrong. He never shared much about Emily with me, and whenever I tried to ask, he would brush it off like she was just another coworker. But deep down, I started to feel something was wrong. And when other people started hinting to me that their relationship seemed to be more than just a friendship, I couldn't ignore it anymore. June rolled around, and it was Mike's birthday. What should have been a happy day turned into one of the strangest nights of our marriage. He suddenly got upset over something trivial, threw a tantrum like a child, and stormed out of the house. He turned off his location, again, and said he was going to the mountains with coworkers. I didn't buy it. Later, I found out it wasn't with coworkers at all. It was just him and Emily, on his birthday. Instead of spending it with me and our kids, he chose to disappear into the mountains with another woman. That was the night my doubts turned into certainty. But even with all of this evidence piling up in my mind, I didn't confront him right away. Part of me was terrified of being wrong. I thought, what if I accuse him and it turns out he's innocent? What if I'm the one ruining everything? So I waited. I watched. And finally, I decided to dig. I logged into our cell provider's account and checked his call logs. What I saw made me physically sick. There were constant calls between Mike and Emily, not just once a week or once every few days. Every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. And these weren't quick, casual calls. They were 30, 40, sometimes even 50 minutes long. He would call her on his way home from work. He would call her while waiting for his mom at the gym. He even called her during Riley's birthday party. Yes, while his daughter was celebrating her birthday, Mike decided he didn't want to be there and left. He went home and spent the time talking to Emily instead. That's the kind of husband and father he was becoming. By July, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I confronted him. I said, "I know about Emily. I know you're talking to her constantly. I know you're lying to me." He denied, of course. But when I told him I wanted a divorce, something in him shifted. For the first time, he looked scared. He asked if it was too late. He asked if there was anything we could do to make it work. And he even suggested counseling. This was shocking because he had always claimed he didn't believe in therapy. But now that he realized he was about to lose his marriage, suddenly, counseling sounded like a good idea. I told him, very clearly, if we're going to try to work this out, you cannot talk to her anymore. Not at all. Zero contact. He nodded. He said he understood. But promises are just words, and with Mike, words never matched actions. We never even made it to counseling before the next incident happened. A few weeks later, we went out together, trying to reconnect. We were at a restaurant, scanning the menu, when he suddenly pointed to a drink. He laughed and said, "Oh, I had this once with Emily and another coworker. We got so drunk." The words hit me like a punch. He was reminiscing about a night out with her. And not just any night. This was the same night, a year ago, when he had gotten so drunk that he never came home. He told me he had slept in his car. But hearing him talk about it now, so casually, I realized he had been lying. I pieced it together in my head. He hadn't been in his car. He had been at her house, sleeping there, with her. As if that wasn't enough, he added another detail. He said that during that night, their coworker had flirted with Emily, tried to hit on her. And then Mike laughed and said, "Yeah, I'm not mad at him or anything though." That comment stuck in my mind for days. Why would you even say something like that? Unless you already had your own claim on her. Unless you already had something going on with her. The more I thought about it, the less it made sense as an innocent statement. At the end of August, things got even worse. We had a fight because Mike was being cruel to Riley. He said I never had his back, that I was always siding with the kids against him. Then he stormed out and left again. He stayed away one night, came back the next, then left again the following night. This became a pattern. Come and go, push and pull, chaos all the time. During that same week, he took Riley to the mall. He didn't tell me Emily would be there. But afterward, he admitted that she had joined them and that she had bought things for Riley. I was furious. How dare he involve our daughter in his mess? How dare he let another woman step into my role as Riley's mother, buying her gifts, playing family with her? When I asked if that was where he had slept while he was away, he admitted it. Yes, I stayed at Emily's house. He tried to soften it, saying, "I just slept on the couch. Her adult kids were there. Nothing happened." But I didn't believe a word of it. The affair had already been going on for a year and a half by then. And still, he refused to admit to anything physical. He blamed me for everything. He said I was the reason he turned to her. He said I never appreciated him, never supported him, never gave him what he needed. It was always my fault in his eyes. Never his. Never Emily's. Just mine. Looking back now, I know that was just manipulation. A way to make me question myself. A way to keep me stuck, doubting, while he carried on with his double life. But at the time, it worked. I stayed. I cried. I tried to make sense of it all. And deep down, I already knew the truth. My husband had been having an affair with Emily for over a year. The evidence was everywhere. The lies, the calls, the nights away, the gifts, the secrecy. But the worst part was the way he still looked me in the eyes and denied it all. Like I was stupid. Like I couldn't see what was right in front of me. After that fight in August, something inside me broke. I had spent months trying to convince myself that maybe I was overreacting, that maybe Mike wasn't doing what my gut screamed he was doing. But when he admitted to staying at Emily's house, couch or not, it felt like confirmation. It was no longer just suspicious behavior. It was betrayal. Still, I didn't leave. And honestly, I ask myself all the time why I stayed. I think the answer is complicated. Fear, love, denial, hope. We had kids together. We had history. And part of me desperately wanted to believe that he could change, that we could somehow fix it. But even while I was clinging to that hope, I knew deep down, something between us had shattered beyond repair. The weeks that followed were hell. Every time he came home, I was tense. Every time his phone buzzed, my stomach flipped. I found myself studying his face, his tone, his body language, searching for cracks in his stories. I became someone I didn't even recognize, suspicious, paranoid, angry. And he noticed. "Why are you always watching me?" he snapped one night. "Because you're hiding something," I shot back. He rolled his eyes, muttered something about me being crazy, and walked away. That word, crazy, cut deeper than he realized, because I was starting to feel like maybe I was. But then, the evidence kept coming. In September, I noticed Riley had become unusually quiet whenever I asked her about outings with her dad. She would shrug and say, "I don't know," or "I forgot." And Riley is usually such a talkative kid, so I pressed a little more, gently. One day, she slipped. She mentioned that lady who bought her things at the mall. She said Emily's name like it was normal, like it wasn't a secret. And that crushed me. It wasn't just me being betrayed anymore. It wasn't just my marriage being disrespected. Now my daughter was involved. My child was being pulled into this twisted triangle. Emily wasn't just his coworker anymore. She was being introduced into our kids' lives as some kind of hidden second mom. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call Emily and tell her to stay the hell away from my family. But instead, I turned to Mike. "Why are you letting her around Riley?" I demanded. His answer? "She likes Emily. Emily's good with her." What's the big deal? The big deal? Everything. The big deal was that he was crossing boundaries so deeply it felt like we were living in two separate realities. In his world, Emily was just a friend, someone good with kids, nothing to worry about. In my world, Emily was the other woman who was chipping away at my family piece by piece. It was around this time that I realized he would never admit to anything. He would never sit down and say, "Yes, I had an affair. Yes, I betrayed you." Instead, he twisted it all back on me. He said I was too controlling. He said I didn't appreciate him. He said he was forced to turn to Emily because I wasn't enough. Every word felt like a knife. Not only was he betraying me, but he was making it my fault. I remember one night vividly. We were sitting in the living room, the kids already in bed. I looked at him and said, "Do you love her?" There was a long pause. Too long. Finally, he said, "It's not about that. She listens to me. She understands me." I felt my chest tighten. "Then what am I?" I whispered. He didn't answer. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. The worst part of all this wasn't even the physical betrayal, though I have no doubt in my mind they were physical, no matter what he claimed. The worst part was the emotional intimacy he gave her. The long phone calls. The secret meetups. The way he turned to her for comfort instead of me. That was what gutted me. Because marriage is supposed to be about partnership, about choosing each other every day. And he had stopped choosing me a long time ago. By October, I felt like a shell of myself. I was functioning, working, parenting, cooking, cleaning, but inside I was crumbling. I started journaling just to get the thoughts out of my head. I wrote page after page about the lies, the calls, the fights, the manipulation. And then one day, I flipped back through the pages and realized something. This wasn't just a rough patch. This wasn't something we could fix with counseling or promises. This was a pattern. A year and a half of deceit, disrespect, and betrayal. And I was still here, trying to pick up the pieces while he carried on with her. One night in November, I finally snapped. We were in the kitchen, arguing yet again. I told him I couldn't keep doing this, that I couldn't keep pretending we were okay. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and said, "So what? You're going to leave me? Over nothing." Over nothing. That phrase still echoes in my head. A year and a half of sneaking around, lying, gaslighting me, dragging our kids into it, and to him it was nothing. I shouted back at him, louder than I ever had before. "It's not nothing. You've been having an affair. You've been lying to me for over a year. You've been choosing her over me, over our family, over our kids. That is not nothing." For a split second, I thought maybe he would break. Maybe he would finally see what he was doing. But instead, he scoffed. "You're being dramatic," he said. And then he walked out the door. Again. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the empty doorway where he had just been. And I realized something. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I was a woman who had been lied to, betrayed, and humiliated for over a year. And he wasn't going to change. Not for me. Not for Riley. Not for Sam. Not for anyone. December came, and with it the holidays. I tried to put on a brave face for the kids. I decorated the house, baked cookies, wrapped presents. But underneath it all, there was this constant ache. Mike was physically present most of the time, but emotionally, he was somewhere else. With her. Always with her. I remember Christmas morning. The kids were so excited, ripping open their gifts. I looked over at Mike, sitting on the couch, scrolling on his phone. And in that moment, I knew he wasn't mine anymore. Maybe he never really had been. He was already gone. In January, something inside me shifted. I stopped begging. I stopped crying in front of him. I stopped asking questions I already knew the answers to. Instead, I started planning. Quietly, secretly, I began to think about what life would look like without him. I thought about custody. I thought about finances. I thought about moving on. And for the first time in months, I felt a small flicker of hope. But of course, Mike noticed the change. And suddenly, he wanted back in. He started being overly nice, buying me little gifts, offering to help around the house. He even brought up counseling again like it was some magic fix. But I didn't fall for it this time. Because I knew it wasn't about me. It was about control. He could feel me slipping away, and he didn't like it. Not because he loved me, but because he didn't want to lose the convenience of me. In February, I made a decision. I was going to confront Emily. Not in a screaming, dramatic way, but calmly, directly. I deserved answers. And if Mike wouldn't give them to me, maybe she would. I still remember the conversation. I called her one afternoon, my hands shaking. When she picked up, I said, "This is Mike's wife." There was a pause. Then she sighed. "I was wondering when you'd call." That sentence told me everything. She knew. She knew what she was doing. She knew she had been part of destroying my marriage. And she wasn't even surprised that I found out. The conversation was short. She didn't admit much, but she didn't deny either. She just said, "You should talk to Mike about this." As if I hadn't been trying to for over a year. When I told Mike I had spoken to her, his face went pale. For once, he didn't have a quick comeback, a sarcastic remark, or an angry deflection. He just sat there, staring at me. And in that silence, I realized I had finally broken through his wall of lies. But what came next would determine everything, whether we stayed together, whether we split, whether our family survived. I always knew the day would come when everything I had been piecing together would finally explode into the open. For months, I had lived in a fog of denial, bargaining, and anger. I had replayed his words, my discoveries, and the lies that didn't quite line up. But the truth hit harder than I could ever have prepared myself for. It wasn't just about Emily. It wasn't just about a midlife crisis. It wasn't just about emotional needs not being met. It was betrayal, prolonged, deliberate, and cruel. And when the final confrontation happened, I felt like I was both the accuser and the executioner, standing over the ruins of the life I thought we had. It started one late evening when he came home after working late. The moment I saw his face, I knew. His eyes wouldn't meet mine, his body language screamed guilt, and there was a silence between us that felt heavier than words. "Mike," I said softly, almost afraid of my own voice. We can't keep living like this. I need the truth. All of it. No more half confessions. No more just friends. He didn't answer at first. He dropped his keys on the counter, rubbed his hands over his face, and exhaled. When he finally spoke, it was barely above a whisper. "You already know," he said. "You've always known." The world stopped spinning for a moment. Every muscle in my body went cold. I wanted him to deny it, to reassure me, to tell me that I was wrong. Instead, he confirmed the very thing I had been running from. "It wasn't just friendship, was it?" I asked, tears already stinging my eyes. He shook his head. "Not at first. But yeah, it became more. A lot more." My chest tightened. "How long?" I managed to choke out. He hesitated, then finally said it. "A year and a half." That was it. The words I dreaded, the timeline that matched all the late nights, the turned-off locations, the secret phone calls, the unexplained absences. A year and a half. I pressed my hands against my face, trying to hold myself together. "How could you?" I whispered. "How could you do this to me? To us? To the kids?" He started pacing, running his hands through his hair. "I didn't mean for it to happen. She was there for me when I felt like you weren't. She listened. She made me feel seen." My voice rose, sharp with pain. "And I wasn't enough? 11 years, a marriage, 3 kids, and I wasn't enough?" "You were everything," he shouted back. "But I was broken." And she filled the cracks. It was the most pathetic, selfish excuse I'd ever heard. And yet, deep down, I had expected it. Every cheater has a story about how they were unfulfilled or lonely. But none of it justifies sneaking around for a year and a half, dragging our kids into it, lying to my face every single day. The dam broke, and I sobbed uncontrollably. "I trusted you, Mike. God, I trusted you with everything." He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "I don't deserve you. I know that. But I don't want to lose you either." The aftermath was worse than the confession, because after the truth came the fallout. I couldn't look at him without seeing her shadow. Every memory felt poisoned. Every laugh we once shared felt fake. The kids noticed, too. Riley asked me why Daddy was sleeping in the guest room. Sam was too little to understand, but he sensed the tension. And Alex, the oldest, looked at me with quiet anger, like he knew more than he was saying. I couldn't shield them anymore. The betrayal wasn't just mine to carry. It had bled into our entire family. We tried counseling, though at first it felt like a cruel joke. Sitting across from a stranger, recounting all the details of my husband's affair, felt like ripping open wounds I was barely holding closed. Mike insisted he wanted to change. He cut off contact with Emily, or so he claimed. He handed over his phone, his passwords, his schedule. But trust isn't a switch you flip back on. Every vibration of his phone made my stomach drop. Every late meeting sent my mind spiraling. And every time I saw him holding Sam or reading with Riley, I felt this ache, because he had risked destroying all of it for someone else. The hardest part was the gaslighting that lingered. Even after his confession, he sometimes slipped back into old habits, minimizing, shifting blame, reminding me of my flaws. "You pushed me away," he'd say. "You were always busy, always stressed." And maybe I was. I was raising kids, managing the house, working. But I never once strayed. I never once sought validation in someone else's arms. "You made a choice," I snapped one day. "Stop acting like I drove you into it. You could have talked to me. You could have fought for us. Instead, you betrayed us." He had no answer. My breaking point came when I discovered that even after counseling started, he had emailed Emily. He claimed it was just closure, that he wanted to end things properly. But to me, it was betrayal all over again. "I can't do this," I told him, shaking as I held the printed email in my hand. "You said it was over. You promised me." His face crumbled. "It was nothing. Please don't give up on me." But in that moment, I realized something important. Whether I stayed or left, I would never get back the marriage I thought I had. So I gave him an ultimatum. Full transparency. Full accountability. No more excuses, no more half-truths, no more lingering shadows of Emily. If he wanted this marriage to survive, he had to fight for it, not just with words, but with actions every single day. He agreed. And for the first time in months, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not fear of losing control, not fear of being caught, but fear of losing me. The months that followed were brutal. We sat through therapy sessions where I screamed and sobbed, where he admitted to details that made me sick, where we tore ourselves down to the bone in order to build back up. The kids saw us fighting less, but the silence in the house was still heavy. Alex confronted him once, blunt and angry. "How could you do this to Mom? After everything she's done for you? You don't deserve her." Mike didn't argue. He just stood there, silent, taking the blows. Because he knew Alex was right. Somewhere in that chaos, though, I found clarity. I realized that staying wasn't about forgiving instantly or pretending it never happened. It was about choosing whether the fight was worth it. And despite everything, despite the pain and humiliation, I looked at my children and knew I didn't want their story to be defined by divorce if there was still a chance, however small, to repair what was broken. So I stayed. But staying didn't mean forgetting. It meant rebuilding brick by brick, with walls higher than before. It meant demanding honesty, respect, consistency. It meant giving him one last chance to prove that family meant more than his selfish desires. And slowly, painfully, we started to stitch the pieces back together. Now, a year after the confession, we're still here. Still married. Still parenting.
Still trying.
The scars are there, and they always will be. But so is the fight. Mike has changed, not perfectly, not overnight, but enough that I see effort where there used to be excuses. And me?
I'm stronger.
Wiser. Less naive. I no longer live in blind trust. But I also no longer live in silence. So here's the truth. The messy, complicated, painful truth. A 1.5-year-long affair nearly destroyed my family. It shattered my heart, broke my trust, and left me questioning everything I thought I knew. But it also forced us to face our demons, to confront the cracks we had ignored, to decide whether we were strong enough to rebuild. And somehow, against all odds, we chose to fight. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if forgiveness will ever feel complete. But I do know this. I refuse to let his betrayal define me. I refuse to let Emily's shadow linger over my life. And whatever happens next, I will walk into it with my head held high because I survived the worst and I'm still standing. So that's how it ended, or maybe how it began again. A 1.5-year-long affair didn't end us, but it changed us forever. And now the choice, every single day, is whether we rise from it or let it consume us.